Hello, Dr. H. This is Sean Stewart from EDAD 920, and this is my final project looking at racism and classism from the movie The Help, which is one of my favorite movies. I hope you like it as well. I have a feeling you do, but I'm just putting that out there. Of course, the plot to The Help. This is just going to be very, very quick. One of the main characters is Skeeter, and she returns home from graduating from college from the University of Mississippi, which they call Old Miss in the film, and which you might hear called Old Miss today here in the year 2016. Personally, I will never call the University of Mississippi Old Miss due to the connotation that Old Miss has. If people have done their research, they would understand why it's kind of a slap in the face to black females, especially from that era, and calling the University of Mississippi Old Miss. But that's neither here nor there. That's for another project and another project presentation. But after she returns home from graduating from college, she aspires to be a writer. One of the things back in this time frame that the movie was filmed in was you would still have black females as housemaids. When Skeeter returned home to her house, her housemaid, who practically raised her at this time at this particular time, wasn't there anymore. And she kept asking her mom why she wasn't there. They wouldn't give her any straight answers, and this kind of frustrated Skeeter. So she decides to find out a little bit more about the life of the help, or the life of the maids, the black maids, if you will. Something that was very controversial to do, and even against the law for them to talk out about this. But this is what she wanted to do, to get back at her mom and to also uncover what's really going on here, especially from her maid that wasn't around anymore. Viola Davis's character is convinced by Skeeter, who is played by, her name slips me at the moment, but she hosted Saturday Night Live last week. But Aileen and Minnie's played by Octavia Spencer, end up sharing their experiences with Skeeter. Minnie ends up getting fired from her, the white lady that she works for, and she ends up going to work for another white lady who happens to be just a tad bit more progressive, her and her husband. And this allows Minnie to, if you want to say, play some jokes or get back at the previous house that she was fired from. But essentially the story goes on, and we're looking at this particular plot. Eventually more maids come forward after the firing of Minnie to tell their story about their lives and their situations. And essentially the town is grappled with the changing times of the civil rights era and this particular situation. And of course, the movie focuses more on Viola Davis's character, but for this particular project, we're focusing on the racial angle and the classism angle. When asking about how this applies to an ism that we've learned over the course of this semester, I think the two isms that apply here, and we're only supposed to pick one, but I think the two that apply here are racism and classism. Racism by whites against blacks, and classism dealing with the black-white binary. And I'm going to delve more into classism and how it pertains to this movie and my thoughts based upon our readings and our videos that we watched this semester and how it applies to 2016 later on in this project. So how does this movie relate to racism? It's pretty straightforward, pretty obvious how it relates to racism in this particular era of our nation's history. But I mean, during the civil rights era, black maids working in white households, and this idea that blacks were beneath still of those white households, and it was their duty, it was their job to be of servant, to provide service to the white maids and to the white families, even going so far as to be a caretaker for white children when it kind of got mixed up into what your job is. Is your job to take care of the house? Is your job to take care of the children? Is your job to be at every beck and call of the white family, especially the woman in the household? One of the things that it relates when it comes to racism is the fact that there were no voice for the maids. Essentially, they had no voice. They could not speak out about some of the wrongdoings that were happening to them. They couldn't speak out about some of the things that were going on in regards to their lives, in regards to their jobs, in regards to their rights that were being taken away, in regards to the rights that they weren't being afforded or they weren't being given. Relates to racism, I think, because there's always that one white person. That's the best way I can describe it. That one white person who gets it. And when I say gets it, they understand that something's wrong here, that these people aren't being treated the way that they should be treated. These are human beings and they shouldn't be treated as second-class citizens. And we see that in the movie with Skeeter as she's uncovering all the stories and the situations surrounding these black maids. And I think an element of white privilege comes into play. White privilege in a sense of I don't know if you could say the way we see it today in the year 2016, but white privilege in a sense that in this era of our nation's history, I think white people thought that they were doing blacks a favor by giving them a job, under the guise and under the idea, hey, it could be worse. And to me, that's not correct. That's not the best way to go about it. And I think that falls under the umbrella of white privilege. How it relates to classism, to me, there's a social class system that's in play here. Social class, we could divide it into educational level. As we see, Skeeter comes back from a college and she's got her bachelor's degree at a 4-year institution of higher learning, a 4-year education, a college degree, something that most, if not all, black people at that moment in time were not afforded the opportunity to do, especially Viola Davis's and Octavia Spencer's characters. They, of course, did not have college degrees, because if they did have college degrees, they probably wouldn't be working as maids at this particular level. But a social class system in the sense of there's a clear defined upper class and a clear defined lower class. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you see that in this movie, and then how we can apply it here to the year 2016. One of the questions we were supposed to answer is what insights we gained here. And for me, when I watched this movie, and I still watch it every so often, it's just hard to imagine how blacks felt during this particular era. Sure, I can ask my grandparents how they felt. I can get stories. I can read. I can watch movies. Even watching the movie Selma was a bit tough. But it's just really hard to imagine how blacks, people with no voice, were living during this particular time and during this particular era. It's very hard to express yourself as a black person without coming off as being whiny, without coming off as not being grateful for what you have, things of that nature. And I if we had more time in this project, I'd focus a little bit more on the insights gained, especially as a black female, as a black woman, how it was difficult to express yourself. And then understanding that one of the insights gained, not all of the opposite are bad. And what I mean by that is you may look at this particular movie and other movies similar to this regarding the situation and think to yourself, well, anybody on the opposite end, that being white people, must be automatically the bad guy. And that's not the case here. We can't just automatically lump and stereotype people all into one particular category. But a couple of implications that I've learned when it comes to this class and in conjunction with this movie, we can apply this to the year 2016. There is still some element of racism and classism, not some element, there is some racism and classism still going on today. And even several of our readings discussed when we got to racism and classism, how this isn't a system that's going away anytime soon. If anything, this particular system is actually getting deeper and dividing even further when it comes to classism, especially. But a couple of implications I wanted to take away from this class and away from this project, and thanks to this movie, would be, does classism still impact blacks and other minorities today? Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, gays, and lesbians. Are we still going by these institutionalized rules that only the minorities can see and those who are not part of the marginalized classes cannot see? And the question being asked, are those being impacted, those being hurt, being given a chance to tell their story? And to me, that's something that I want to bring out as an educator, looking at these marginalized classes, whether you're black, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're female, whether you're gay and lesbian, whether you're Muslim, what have you, whether you're disabled, what particular story do you have, and how can I get that to, how can I get you to bring that out? How can I get you to be able to tell your story because you do have a voice? And my final thing is, does this impact my students, which is what I'm going to start looking at from now on? And I really want to know how this impacts me as a professor. I'm a minority, I'm a black professor teaching at a majority white institution, so I would like to know how this fits me. And that is my project that is for this particular class. Thank you, Dr. H.